knew you had to practice. I knew you had to fail. Because, frankly, if you don't develop an appetite for failure as an actor or an athlete, you're never going to succeed.
In Hollywood, some stars shoot across the sky and vanish. Others, though, manage to burn with a steady, enduring glow, becoming more than just actors. They become institutions. Tom Selleck is one of those enduring stars. For decades, he's been a fixture on our screens, a symbol of quiet strength and charisma. From the sunny shores of Magnum P.I. to the corridors of power in Blue Bloods, he's been a constant, reassuring presence. But behind every great career, there's often a quiet influence, someone who helped shape the path. For Selleck, that influence had a name, James Garner. For years, people called them friends, two of TV's most iconic leading men. But now, at 80 years old, Tom Selleck is finally revealing the whole story. It wasn't just a friendship, it was a mentorship, a masterclass in how to handle stardom and how to survive, taught by a man who was a hero both on and off the screen. For decades, Tom Selleck has been one of Hollywood's most recognizable faces. But the one story that truly defined his journey is a story he's only now ready to share. It's about his mentor, James Garner, and the single most important lesson he ever learned, a lesson that would change the course of his life and career forever. This isn't just a story about two actors. It's the story of a legacy passed down, a code of conduct in a town that rarely has one, and the life-altering power of a true role model. Before their paths ever crossed, Tom Selleck and James Garner were on completely different tracks.
To really get the weight of Garner's influence, you have to understand the kind of man he was long before he became a mentor. James Garner wasn't some polished, studio-made star from Hollywood's golden age. Born James Scott Bumgarner in Oklahoma,
his early life was tough. His mother died when he was young, and he and his brothers had a difficult childhood, which included a volatile, abusive stepmother. That experience forged a resilience in him and a deep-seated sense of fairness that would define his entire life. He understood struggle because he'd lived it. After serving in the Korean War, where he earned 2 Purple Hearts, Garner stumbled into acting almost by accident. He always said he swiped his natural acting style from watching Henry Fonda on stage night after night. That commitment to being real became Garner's trademark. By the 70s, he was a superstar, but a different kind. He was Brett Maverick, the charming gambler who'd rather use his wits than a gun, and Jim Rockford, the private eye in a trailer who was trying to avoid a punch as much as land one. These weren't perfect heroes. They were relatable, flawed, and human. Off-screen, his reputation was gold. In an industry full of egos, Garner was known for his professionalism, his kindness to the crew, and his willingness to stand up to the studios, a risky move that earned him a ton of respect. He was the real deal. On the other side of town was a young Tom Selleck, tall, impossibly handsome, a former USC basketball player. Selleck looked like he was built for stardom. But his early career was a slow, grinding series of letdowns. He calls himself an accidental actor who fell into the business after an appearance on The Dating Game. For over a decade, he worked tirelessly, taking small parts, doing commercials, and starring in 6, that's right, 6, unsold TV pilots. He was a working actor, but the big break just wouldn't come. He got a masterclass in rejection, something he later said taught him to develop an appetite for failure. He worked on sets where he felt like he was walking on eggshells, promising himself that if he ever got his own show, it would be different. He was a guy with massive potential, stuck in the Hollywood machine, just trying to find a way forward. So you had these two men. One, an established icon who built a career on authenticity and integrity, and the other, a struggling but determined actor who was on the verge of either making it big or fading away for good. The stage was set for a meeting that would do a lot more than just give Selleck another credit on his resume. It would give him a blueprint for a life. Tom Selleck and James Garner's careers finally intersected on the set of the show that defined Garner's career, The Rockford Files. In the late 1970s, Selleck, still grinding it out with guest star roles, was cast in 2 episodes. He was set to play Lance White, a character who was the perfect, almost comically flawless, foil to Jim, Rockford's beat-down private eye. For Selleck, this wasn't just another gig. This was a chance to work with a man he'd long admired. He's admitted he was nervous before they met. James Garner was a TV titan. It would have been easy for Garner to be distant or aloof, the king on his own set. But the reality, as Selleck quickly found out, was completely different. Garner immediately put the younger actor at ease. Jim didn't have a phony bone in his body, Selleck later recalled. There was no ego, no air of superiority. Garner was allergic to phoniness and treated everyone with a genuine kindness, from the director to the crew. For Selleck, that first meeting was more than a pleasant surprise. It was the start of his real Hollywood education. Selleck played Lance White in 2 episodes, White on White and Nearly Perfect, and Nice Guys Finish Dead. The character, Lance, was everything Jim Rockford wasn't, perfectly dressed, universally loved, and so lucky he solved cases by accident. Rockford, meanwhile, was always getting stiffed on his fee and taking a punch. The dynamic was brilliant TV, but behind the scenes something more important was happening. Selleck wasn't just acting opposite Garner. He was watching him. He saw a man who was the undisputed star of the show, the number 1 on the call sheet, but who used his power to build people up, not put them down. Garner was famous for doing his own J-turns in the iconic Firebird, but on set, he was completely grounded. He'd sit in his van between takes, approachable and open, creating a professional but relaxed atmosphere. It was right there, in that van, that some of Selleck's most important conversations with his mentor would happen. The whole experience was a masterclass. Selleck learned more about being a professional on the Rockford Files set than any acting class could ever teach him. He saw that being a leading man wasn't about demanding the spotlight. It was about making everyone else comfortable enough to shine. This wasn't some dramatic mentorship with big speeches. It was quiet, taught by example, in Garner's easy laugh, and the fundamental decency he showed everyone. For Tom Selleck, the struggling actor, meeting James Garner was a revelation. He wasn't just learning how to act. He was learning how to be. On the set of The Rockford Files, Tom Selleck's real education began, and it went way beyond just hitting his marks. He was watching a master at work, not just as an actor, but as a leader. And the first, biggest lesson he learned was about the real responsibility that comes with being the star of a show. Selleck had been on tense sets before, where fear and ego ran the show. He had quietly promised himself, "Boy, if I ever have my own show, that is never going to happen." On Garner's set, he saw that promise come to life. James Garner didn't just have a great set, he cultivated it. He created a family. This wasn't an accident. Garner knew that as the lead, the Bubba 1 on the call sheet, he set the tone. His mood, his work ethic, it all trickled down to every single person on the cast and crew. Instead of using his power to be a big shot, he used it to build a team. Selleck saw how Garner knew crew members' names and treated them like colleagues. He made sure everyone felt like they were part of the same mission. Garner's leadership came from his own deep-seated belief in fairness, probably born from his tough childhood, and his later fights with studios over contracts. He actually took Warner Brothers to court and won, a move that was almost unheard of, but cemented his reputation as a guy who'd fight for what was right. That same protective instinct was on full display on his set. He wasn't just the star, he was the protector of the show's culture. A great example was the show's wrap parties. They weren't just standard events, they were huge, happy family get-togethers, reflecting the very spirit Garner had built. This idea of an on-set family left a huge mark on Selleck. In his memoir, You Never Know, Selleck recalls how Garner showed him what it meant to lead. "There was no school for that," Selleck wrote, "but I'd had Jim Garner as my teacher." This was the first great truth Selleck learned from Garner. Leadership isn't about the size of your trailer. It's about obligation. It's the duty to create a place where people can do their best work without fear. It's knowing a show's success is built on the morale of every single person behind the camera. Garner showed him that a star's greatest power is the ability to make other people feel seen and respected. For Selleck, this wasn't just a professional strategy. It was a matter of character, a principle that would become the foundation of his own career. The lessons Selleck learned on the Rockford Files set were about to be put to the test. After years of almost but not quite, Tom Selleck finally got his big break. Universal offered him the lead in a new series set in Hawaii called Magnum P.I. But there was a catch. The character, Thomas Magnum, was written as a perfect James Bond type. A perfect James Bond guy with air hostesses on each arm, as Selleck put it. And Selleck hated it. "I'm tired of playing what I look like," he told the producers. He didn't want to play another slick, perfect hero. He wanted to play someone interesting, complicated, and flawed, a lot like the kind of hero his mentor, James Garner, had perfected. He saw Magnum as more of a regular guy, a blue-collar jock with a sense of humor, someone audiences could actually connect with. The producers pushed back. So there he was, at a huge crossroads, with the biggest opportunity of his life on the line. What did he do? He went to the one person whose advice he trusted completely, James Garner. Sitting in Garner's van, Selleck laid out the problem. Garner didn't tell him what to do. Instead, he empowered him. He told Selleck, "I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I can tell you this. If they want you, you'll never have more power than you do right now. If you feel like making a stand, this is your chance." That was all Selleck needed to hear. Armed with that advice and the extra leverage of a competing offer to play Indiana Jones in Raiders of the Lost Ark, Selleck put it all on the line. He argued for a more human, more flawed, more Rockford-like Thomas Magnum, and Universal caved. The character was changed, and a TV icon was born. When Magnum P.I.'s premiered, it was clear the torch had been passed. Selleck, now the star of his own hit show, put everything he learned from Garner into practice. He took his responsibility as Burrow 1 on the call sheet seriously. He was dead set on creating the kind of respectful, friendly set he'd always wanted to work on, just like he'd seen on the Rockford Files. He treated his co-stars, Larry Manetti, Roger E. Mosley, and John Hillerman, and the whole crew like partners. The show itself became one of the first to portray Vietnam veterans in a positive light, giving its characters a depth that was groundbreaking at the time. And just like his mentor, Selleck made sure the wrap parties were huge, inclusive family celebrations, a tribute to the community they'd built over 8 seasons. He was no longer just the student watching the master. He was now the leader, the quarterback, as he calls it. He was living out Garner's mentorship every single day, proving that those quiet lessons learned in a van on the Universal lot were a practical guide to navigating stardom with grace. He had taken James Garner's blueprint and was now building his own legacy with it. For years, Tom Selleck was on top of the world as Thomas Magnum. He had mastered Garner's first lesson, how to lead a show with integrity. But as time went on, a deeper, more personal lesson from his mentor would come to define the rest of his life. This was the big one, the lesson that went beyond Hollywood and got to the heart of a life well lived. The lesson was simple. Your life is more important than your work. James Garner had warned Selleck about the traps of fame, the ego, the sense of entitlement, the temptation to trade your character for a bigger paycheck. Garner himself was the perfect example of how to handle it. He was a huge star, but he stayed grounded. He was married to his wife, Lois, for nearly 58 years, a testament to his commitment to a life outside the studio gates. He worked on his ranch, loved racing cars, and fiercely protected his private life. Garner proved that being a husband and a father was infinitely more important than any role he could play. That wisdom really hit home for Selleck as Magnum P.I. was at its peak. The show was a monster hit, and could have easily gone on for years. But Selleck was burned out. More importantly, he had fallen in love. He met actress Gilly Mack, and he knew he wanted to build a real life with her, a life that wasn't run by shooting schedules and TV ratings. So he faced a choice: keep the hit show going or step away to build a family. Selleck chose family. He walked away from Magnum P.I. at the height of its popularity, a move that stunned Hollywood, but made perfect sense to him. It was a decision straight out of the James Garner playbook. He had learned that real success isn't measured in seasons or syndication deals, but in the richness of your personal life. After marrying Gilly, Selleck bought a 65-acre avocado ranch in Ventura County. He stepped back from the spotlight, trading red carpets for dusty roads. He dove into the physical labor of running the ranch, finding more satisfaction in clearing brush than in any gym. He famously joked that he worked cheaper than anyone he could hire. He and Gilly raised their daughter, Hannah, on that ranch, giving her a normal childhood far away from the glare of Hollywood. This is the core of the truth Selleck is sharing now. The most important thing James Garner ever taught him was that you have to choose the kind of life you want. Garner showed him that it was possible to be a megastar without letting fame swallow you whole. He was a model of a man who understood that his job was what he did, not who he was. The real legacy was the family you build and the character you keep when the cameras stop rolling. For Tom Selleck, this wasn't just advice. It was a philosophy he lived by. The bond between Tom Selleck and James Garner didn't just stay on the set. It grew into a real friendship that lasted for decades. It was a relationship built on mutual respect, a shared sense of humor, and a deep understanding of the pressures they both faced. As Selleck's own star rose with Magnum P.I., he wasn't just the student anymore. He and Garner became peers, two guys who knew what it was like to carry a hit show on their shoulders. In an industry that's full of rivalry, what grew between them was a powerful, quiet respect. Garner became a sounding board for Selleck. When the pressure of fame got to be too much, Garner could cut through the noise with a quick story or a simple laugh, reminding him of what really mattered. Whether it was about studio politics, health scares, or just the toll of being in the spotlight, Garner had been there. His advice was always simple but profound. Take the job you can respect tomorrow morning. Their friendship was also just easy. They talked about family, sports, and life away from Hollywood. They shared a love for the outdoors and a down-to-earth attitude that was rare in their world. Selleck admired Garner's authenticity, how he could be a gentleman one moment and mischievous the next. Garner, in turn, saw in Selleck a worthy successor, someone who could carry the torch for the American leading man. Selleck has said that Garner was a stabilizing force during the crazy years of his peak fame. He talks about his mentor, not just as a professional guide, but as a big brother whose kindness left a permanent mark. He admits he saw Garner as a mirror, someone who showed him the kind of actor, and more importantly, the kind of man he wanted to be. When James Garner passed away in 2014, Selleck lost more than a fellow actor. He lost his friend. At the memorial service, Selleck spoke with a trembling voice, calling Garner a great man, a wonderful friend, and a model of professionalism that I followed my entire life. Years later, the emotion is still raw. Selleck has said he often wishes he could just pick up the phone for one more conversation, one more piece of advice, one more laugh. Their friendship went far beyond Hollywood. It was a bond that shaped a life. The principles James Garner taught Tom Selleck didn't just disappear when Magnum P.I. ended. They became the guiding philosophy for the rest of Selleck's career, a legacy that's on full display in his role as Commissioner Frank Reagan in the hit series Blue Bloods. When Selleck started on Blue Bloods in 2010, he brought the Garner blueprint for leadership with him. As the patriarch of the Reagan family on screen and the leader of the cast off screen, he once again set the tone. He consciously created the same kind of family atmosphere he first saw on the Rockford Files and built himself on Magnum P.I., the Clearest symbol of this is the show's famous Sunday dinner scenes. In every episode, the Reagan family gathers around the table to argue, laugh, and reconnect. Those scenes became the heart of the show. But behind the camera, they served an even bigger purpose. For the cast, those dinners were a guaranteed chance to come together as a team every 8 days. Selleck explained that on a big show, you could go weeks without seeing some of your co-stars. The dinner scenes, in his view, were the key to the show and the show's success. His co-stars agree. Donnie Wahlberg, who plays Danny Reagan, has talked about how the cast grew into a real family, with the dinner scenes as their bonding ritual. Selleck himself has said, "We were a real family." This is the Garner legacy in action, decades after it began. Now, at 80, as Blue Bloods comes to an end, Selleck is looking back, putting all these life lessons into his memoir, You Never Know. The book isn't a gossipy tell-all. It's a funny, honest reflection on an accidental career and the principles that guided it. And throughout the book, he pays tribute to his mentors, especially James Garner. By finally telling the full story of Garner's impact, Selleck is doing more than just sharing Hollywood memories. He's honoring the man who shaped him. He's making it clear. You want to know how I lasted this long? Look at James Garner. The legacy lives on, not just in old TV shows, but in the character of a man who learned from the best and carried the torch with honor. The story of Tom Selleck and James Garner is more than just Hollywood trivia. It's a powerful story about mentorship, integrity, and the incredible impact one good man can have on another. At 80, Tom Selleck isn't sharing this story for headlines. He's sharing it out of gratitude. The truth is, James Garner gave him more than a few good career tips. He gave him a moral compass. In a business that often rewards ego, Garner showed him you could be a star on screen and a decent human being off it. He taught him that real power wasn't fame, but the freedom to do good work and create an environment where others could too. He proved with his own life that a career is what you build, but a legacy is who you are.